Hey everyone, Dr. Sherri here. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Off the Couch with Dr. Sherri. For those of you that don't know me or aren't familiar with me, it occurred to me that I've never really told you who I am, or what I do is more accurate. So I am a transformative speaker, coach, and writer. And one of the reasons that I'm doing Off the Couch is to bring to light some of the topics that we don't typically talk about on a regular basis. We certainly don't talk about them at cocktail parties for the most part. Sometimes we might talk about them with close friends and things like that, but we really don't talk about some of these issues that I believe are so important to people in terms of their whole person well-being, right? Not just your mental health, but your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being. And so that's my goal for Off the Couch. And I am going to, in this video today, in this episode of Off the Couch today, I'm going to answer a question for you. And before I get into the topic and answer that question, here's what I need from you. I would love it if you would help me get my message, get this message. It's not really mine, it's for people. It's come from years of experience with other people. If you would help me get this message out to other people, you can do that in a couple of ways. Facebook is fantastic for helping to promote people's messages, particularly through live video feed. If you do a couple of things as the viewer, and you can do this either if you're watching on the live broadcast, or you can do this if you're watching in the replay. So it's pretty simple. One of the things you can do is use those emojis that are at the bottom of your screen as you're watching the video. You can swipe left to exit out of quiet mode, and it will show you comments from other people. If I say something that resonates with you, that you like, I want you to click the like button. If I say something that resonates with you that you love, I want you to click the love button. If I say something that's made you go, wow, I've never thought about it in that way before, I want you to click the wow button. Believe it or not, this actually helps the message to get out to more people. The other thing that you can do is really engage with me. You know, I want this to be a dialogue, and a lot of you are going to watch this on the replay and not live, and that's fine too. We can still have a dialogue. I don't log off forever after the broadcast is over. And so what I want you to do is to engage with me, offer me your comments, and I want you to share this video with other people. I know as you're watching it, other people are going to come to mind, your friends and family, they're going to come to mind, and you're going to think, oh my goodness, this person needs to hear this. So my request of you is that you would please share it with other people. So let's dive into the question. Hey, Holly. Hey, Diane. Thanks for joining. Let's dive into the question today. So here is the question that I am going to answer in today's video. And that is, are anxiety and depression distant cousins? Really, we could just lay that out and say, are anxiety and depression related? Okay. So anxiety and depression, the first thing we're going to do is define those, because there are a lot of different definitions out there. And what I want you to know first and foremost, regardless of the definition that you find on Google, on the internet, or you hear from anybody, even my definitions, you need to define what that means for you, right? Because everybody has a unique and distinct experience of anxiety and or depression. Before we define them, the first thing I want to start off with is to dispel this myth that only a certain amount of people deal with anxiety and depression. I am here to tell you point blank that if you are human, at some point in your life, you have or you will deal with anxiety or depression. Again, based on how you define that for yourself, and we're going to learn a little bit more about that today so that I can help you put it into a context that you can actually wrap your mind around and actually start to become the driver of those things as opposed to having them drive you. And I can speak from firsthand experience about anxiety or depression. I've experienced them both, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's part of the common human experience, and we're going to dispel that myth today. So let's talk a little bit about what anxiety is and what depression is. So it's pretty common, right? Anxiety is kind of nervousness or fear or worry. That's a big word that a lot of people use that I've talked to is, I'm so worried, I just don't know what's going to happen, right? And it's this kind of, sometimes anxiety is the body's way, by the way, the way that we're created to notify us, to alert us to a potential threat or to something that's wrong, right? It isn't always some grand quote unquote disorder. That's an episode for another day. Anxiety is not a disorder. Anxiety is common to the human experience, and if you haven't already experienced it, I assure you that you will at some point in your future. It's just how we're wired, right? So sometimes anxiety is good. It's like that little butterfly in your stomach where you're nervous about something, but it's a good, excited nervous. And then other times it's this horrible pit of the stomach, nauseous feeling of, I just don't know what's going to happen, right? That's anxiety. And now let's switch to depression. And then I'm going to talk about where those two intersect, okay? So depression, it seems like it's totally the opposite of anxiety, right? Depression is sadness. It's a feeling of heaviness. It's a feeling of not being content. It is, I want to know what it is for you too, because again, there's no shame in saying, yes, I've dealt with this in my life. All of us have. I can attest to that. So anybody that tells you that they haven't, maybe that's just not what they've labeled it, but they have, I assure you. So depression is this sadness. It's a lack of joy sometimes. It's also sometimes a worry, right? But it's a lot of thought-based sadness. So it's the same thing with anxiety. Anxiety is very thought-based, worry about what's going to happen or worry about the future, right? And thank you so much, those of you that have joined me. Don't worry, you're going to be able to watch the replay if you can't join me live. Stay in touch with me and comment and like. But now I'm going to identify the answer to that question. Are they distant cousins? I'm actually going to say that they are so closely related, it is really difficult to tell them apart. Actually, in my professional career over the years, I've had a lot of people say to me on the couch, and off the couch in my personal life, my friends, my family, I just don't know. I don't know if I'm anxious. I don't know if I'm depressed. I don't know what's going on with me. I just know that these are the things that I'm dealing with. These are the things that I'm struggling with. Either I feel tearful or I just feel anxious and nervous all the time. I just don't know what it is. How do I know what it really is? And anxiety and depression are so closely related that they have a common bond. They actually have a yoke that joins them. And that yoke is the focus of time. So let me put this in perspective for you. Anxiety, that nervousness, that worry about something that's going to happen in the future or not happen, right? I don't know if I'm going to land that job, or I don't know if things are going to work out between me and my spouse, right? Whatever the anxiety is about, it's about the future. It's about something that's going to happen, or better yet, more accurately, something that you fear will happen, something that you think will happen, or something that you fear won't happen, or something that you think won't happen, right? So again, it's very heavily based in the thought world, and there's a focus on future, right? There's that time, that common bond, that thing that yokes anxiety and depression. Now let's look at depression on the other hand. Depression, sadness, loss, right? Maybe it's the loss of a loved one. Maybe it's the loss of a hope or an expectation or a dream. Whatever it is that's keeping you down, keeping you unsatisfied, keeping you discontented, keeping you tearful, keeping you focused is typically something that's in the past, right? So depression is focused on something that maybe we never had that we wanted and we don't have. But you see then how that past can quickly traverse into the future. So we think, maybe that's something I never had. Maybe it's something that I lost, and I think I'll never have it again. And there we go. Now we're off to the road in the future. And now that shifts to anxiety. So they are so closely linked, it's very difficult to tell them apart. And that's why I argue that labels are not so much important as your personal unique experience of what we're talking about today. And I want you to, again, please engage with me and share with your friends. You know, this is a topic that in the news, they say we need to talk about this more, but really they talk about it in a clinical way, in a way that promotes stigma in a way that says there's something wrong with you if you have experienced anxiety and depression. There is nothing wrong with you. You are gloriously imperfect. You are gloriously human, just as I am. And I get very passionate about this topic because there's too many people walking around thinking that there's something wrong with them, that there is a characterological flaw. And that is such a lie. It could not be further from the truth. Anxiety and depression are both common human experiences. So I want you, I don't know who that's for today, but if you're watching, I hope it's for you, or maybe it's for a friend or family member of yours. But I want you to share that with them and encourage them that there is nothing wrong with them, that this is part of a timeline focus of the mind, and the mind is so powerful, you guys. You know, I think about the interconnectedness of anxiety and depression. And hey, Kitty, thanks for joining. I think about the interconnectedness, and I think about, especially for women, this is such a challenge. So I'm actually going to be speaking at an event, and this comes up not to advertise it, but to talk about women and expectations, or hopes and dreams, the things that we have in our life. You know, growing up from very young, we hope for things. We have kind of an idea of what our life is supposed to be like. And one day, you know, in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, whenever it is, life kind of seems to hit you and you go, wow, that didn't turn out the way I expected, right? Hey, John, thanks for joining. And men are not immune from this either. You know, we have these expectations. And so what happens is, growing up and becoming an adult, and, you know, adulting as we do every day, and living life and going through disappointments and triumphs equally, life doesn't always map out the way that we anticipated. In fact, I would say 99.9% of the time, I've never met anybody whose life has mapped out. Thank you for the love, including myself. And so what can happen is that all that anxiety about the future, when it starts to be unrealized in our eyes, that can shift again now to the past. Depression, what we lost, what we don't have, right? So again, they are so closely intertwined that it's very difficult to tell them apart. My encouragement to you today is we're not really going to talk about exactly where to go in terms of dealing with depression and anxiety. That's going to be for future episodes. Today's episode is really answering this question for you, that it's not about labels. It's not about deciding, is it depression? Is it anxiety? You know, it just doesn't matter, because your experience is your experience. You do need to decide for yourself, though, where your focus is. That's why I brought up this interconnectedness, right? Is your focus in the past? Is your focus on something that you've lost, something that you've never had? And does that now convert into anxiety about, will I ever have that thing? Will I ever get that thing? Right? Where is your focus for you? What is keeping you from being free of that anxiety and depression? And here's why that question is so important about, you know, this concept of where they're yoked in time. It's so important because our mind, if it's fixated on the past, right? Or if it's fixated on the future, we can call that depression, sadness, loss, whatever we want to call it. Or it's fixated on the future, worry, nervousness, anxiety. We are not focused in the here and now. And when we're not focused in the here and now, guess what? We do nothing. It is impossible, by the way. I watched this episode. I think her name was Lisa Nichols. Look her up on YouTube. Great speaker. But she shared a really triumphant story. And she said, comfort and, well, she didn't say this. She actually said her grandmother said it. She said, comfort and conviction cannot lay on the same block. They can't live on the same block. I'll say that again. Comfort and conviction cannot live on the same block. And again, I'm quoting Lisa Nichols' grandmother's quote. So the challenge to you today is, if you recognize that your mind's eye, another word for your mind's eye, by the way, is your heart. It's kind of what drives you, kind of what drives your thoughts and your mind. Where your mind's eye is what you're going to do. So if you're focused in the past, something that you can't control, something that you can't change, right? Can't go back in time, at least not yet. Maybe one day we'll have time travel. Or if you're focused on the future, again, something you can't predict. You're not God. You don't know what's going to happen. So stop trying to fool your brain into thinking either A, that you can recover something lost or get back to, this is one that I hear all the time. I just want to get back to the person that I was, this happy, contented person. I hate to break it to you, but life's triumphs and disappointments, its hills, its valleys, they shape you, they mold you into a continually evolving person. You're never, ever going to go back and be a certain person. You're never going to look forward and be a certain person that you envision. The only person you can be is by focusing your mind's eye on what's happening right now, right here, today, right? And that's how you keep yourself out of that trap of anxiety, the future, and depression, the past. Those are traps, by the way. They're mind traps. And what they do, the other thing that they have in common is they keep you from doing anything. You know, depression, you can kind of picture this person that's having these really just horrible, downtrodden thoughts. When you think of depression, think of somebody who's thinking of bemoaning, and not just bemoaning in a bad way. I'm not judging that. I'm saying deliberating over and over and over again in their head. Can you imagine being so swamped in a world of sadness and loss where that's your focus? That's why a lot of people can't get out of bed. Their focus is either on something that never was or something that they had and they can't believe was taken away from them. That's another topic for another day. I have a book that I'm working on called Stripped, where what's left when everything we hoped for is gone. But that's, again, anxiety and depression, they're rooted in where our mind's eye, our heart is focused. So the same thing, challenging you. Where is your focus? Is your focus on worrying about what's going to happen in the future? Is your focus on, oh my goodness, I just had a conversation with this person and I don't know how they're going to react? So now I've got to sit home and worry about it and bite my nails. And worst case scenario, you know, people drink, right? People do a lot of things to cope with anxiety and depression. They'll drink, they'll do drugs, they'll do other things that are harmful to themselves, go on shopping sprees, go gambling, whatever it is. These are all fixes to get our mind's eye off of the past or the future. My encouragement to you, my challenge to you really today is simply this, to identify for yourself and those loved ones who I know are coming to mind as I'm talking about these things, your friends, your family, perhaps your children even, your parents. Think about where they are. Where is their mind's eye? And how can you encourage them? How can you encourage yourself to focus your mind's eye on right now, on the present? Because guess what? The choices that you make right now at this very moment are the ones that will dictate the future, right? Every one of those moments added up is going to dictate the future, but you don't need to worry about the future because the future molds itself. Tomorrow takes care of itself, right? That's in the Bible. Tomorrow, do not worry for today, because for anything but today, because tomorrow will take care of itself. I assure you that it will. There is nothing you can do in your mind's eye to focus on that is going to change what is going to happen tomorrow, that is going to change what is going to happen an hour from now. The only thing you can do is to decide what you're going to do in the moment when you're presented with things. And I am not trivializing or minimizing people's experiences of depression or anxiety. What I'm trying to do is to offer you a context, a mind's eye context for how these things are exacerbated, how they're worsened, and how they rule people's lives. And it's just time that we get fed up with that. We do not have to live with that. Our loved ones do not have to live with that, right? And it's not I say it's a chicken or egg thing, right? We talk a lot about, well, is depression or anxiety inherited? Is depression genetic? Is there a chemical imbalance? Yes to all of those things. And that's not what we're talking about, because that doesn't help you in the moment, right? So what? Let's say depression is inherited. Let's say you have a family history of that and you're prone to that. That does you no good on what to do right now with that information. All it does is puts a label on it. All it does is gives you a source. It gives you no path forward. And so I'm going to encourage you again. I'm going to challenge you and challenge myself. I told you before, I've dealt with anxiety and depression in the past. And I mean, for real, like for real, for real. I'm a clinical psychologist, right? And I'm sitting across from people that I'm supposed to help, and I'm having these challenges. And that's part of my aha. That was part of my evolution from, really the death of a therapist to the birth of a speaker and sharing this message, is that we have these common human experiences. And what we do as a society is we tend to pigeonhole people and say, if you have struggled with this, then there is something characterologically wrong with you, right? And there's nothing you can do about it. I actually had one person tell me a long time ago, my psychiatrist, this is what they told me. They said, my psychiatrist told me that I was going to struggle with depression for the rest of my life. I want you to hear the power of that. My psychiatrist told me that I was going to struggle with depression for the rest of my life. And guess what? She believed it. Why? Because this person was in authority. Who are we? Who is anybody? I don't care what pedigree you have. I don't care what expertise you have. Who are you to convince somebody of the bleakness of their future? That really, it not only mystifies me, but it really does a disservice to the very people that the profession is supposed to help. And so I had to come out of the behind four walls of being a therapist and really open up the dialogue about just how normal these experiences are. And I really hope you find value in that. And if you do find value in that, would you please share my message with friends and family? You can just share the link to this video. You can share my Dr. Sherri page. You can follow me on Instagram, where I have a little bit of different content there at Dr. Sherri Speaks. I've also got all of these videos archived on my Dr. Sherri Speaks YouTube channel. And again, this isn't about Dr. Sherri. My why, as I mentioned last week on Off the Couch, is you. I do this because I need you to know that you're not alone and there is nothing wrong with you. Okay? So, depression and anxiety for you, what do they look like? Are you focused on the past? Are you focused on the future? Or are you focused on right now? If you're focused on the past and you're laying in bed right now and you're struggling to get out of the bed, that's because your mind's eye is focused on the past, right? If you're struggling to get out of the house because you're worried about what's going to happen when you leave, that's a mind's eye focus on the future. Now, I'm not saying this is a simple fix. It takes hard work and practice, and you're going to need a partner in this. You can't do this alone. We're not meant to do these things alone. We're not meant to deal with anxiety and depression on our own. They are common human experiences. And as such, it's your obligation to yourself and other people around you who love you to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. And Dr. Sherri said it's normal. Yes, she did. And you can use me, and you can private message me. You can talk to me anytime. I'd be honored to point you in the right direction and maybe even sign you up for coaching with me if that's something that you would be interested in. So today, thank you so much, Holly, Diane, Kitty, John, Megan, Beth. I really am so grateful for all of you for joining me today. And for those of you that are going to watch the replay, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day. Again, I am doing these episodes of Off the Couch with Dr. Sherri every Tuesday at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. And I typically don't know what the topic is going to be until the next one, but my call to action to you is this. I want feedback from you. What do you want the next message to be about? I can't promise that it will be the very next message, but I really want your feedback. I want to know what it is. What do you want to talk about that nobody else is talking about? Let's bring that to light and stop hiding it in the dark and stop feeling shame and stop feeling like there's something wrong with us. So thank you guys again for joining. You are a valued part of my life, and I can't wait to see you next week on Off the Couch with Dr. Sherri, where I'm shifting perspectives and speaking life to you. Take care, everyone.